Hi, my name is Lindsay. Welcome to the first Yarn Lovers podcast. You can find me on Ravelry as Callie Astra, and you can find me on Plurk, Facebook and Twitter as Yarn Lovers. I wanted to start a podcast because I watch a few video podcasts and most of them are American. I find some of the cultural references a bit difficult. For example, the chain stores for yarn we don't have here, so I wanted to make one which was UK based. I recently moved to very near London from Iceland, where I had been for a few years. I live with my partner and my eldest son, who is 16, my youngest son, who's 5 3/4, and I have a 17-year-old girl who lives back in Scotland. I apologise to any Americans who do not understand my accent. I am trying very hard to speak fairly slowly. I realise Scottish is sometimes quite difficult to understand, and I have listened to myself more times today than I care to admit. Now to the knitting. I started knitting under a year ago when I moved here. My mother had taught me to knit when I was a very small child. The only thing I remember about that is that she used to cast on stitches for me, and I used to knit until the stitches got too tight for me to get another needle through, and then she used to cast on for me again. I don't think I actually managed to accomplish more than a few rows. Thankfully now my attention is much looser and I can get to the end of a project. I started and picked up knitting again when I moved here, after possibly a few failed attempts a couple of years back, and I'm very, very glad that I did. It keeps me fairly sane, it gives me something to do. I'm currently unemployed, so my days are filled with knitting, and I've recently become completely obsessed with yarn, much to my other half's dismay, as the bedroom is being taken over by wool. Now, what have I got on the needles? I don't have any finished objects this week unless you include one sock, because anything I have recently finished has been sent off to recipients. I'm now rummaging in bags. The second sock, three rows of the second sock. It's the Cookie Mona pattern, the other one of which is here, which I am fairly pleased with. It's going to an Icelandic friend, so I hope she is fairly pleased with it too. Sorry, wrong way. There we go. It's not been washed yet, obviously, because I've only finished one. The yarn is Panda Feet from Sheepy Time yarn or Sheepy Time knits, and it's in the Ruby Slippers colourway, which is beautiful and very red. It's, if I can remember correctly, it's 80% wool and 20% bamboo, but I may be wrong. There's bamboo in it anyway, hence the Panda Feet. I must finish this other sock so I can get it sent off to its owner. I have just started knitting a pair of fingerless mitts randomly. I'm not following any pattern in particular. I've looked at a few plain fingerless mitt patterns, so I get a general idea. I'm knitting a sock without the toe and a thumb. I don't know what this is. I picked it up a long time ago in the local hobbycraft store. It's 4-ply sock wool, I know that much. I do not know what the colourway is. I suspect it was a number 207 or something, but it's knitting up quite nicely. I rather like the stripes. There's a bit of red in there, which is quite nice. I may also send these off with the socks, I don't know. What else have I got? Sorry, I'm rummaging through bags. I started this I cast this on, what day is it? Sunday night. It's now Tuesday. And that's backwards. I don't know how well you can see that. This is the Chinook shawl kit from Knit Picks, which I have had sitting in a box for a very long time. The pattern is here. It's been sitting in a box for a very long time for two reasons. The first of which was that I knit up the Fall Seasons shawl by Knit Picks. It was the first lace project I did. It took me, I think it was 6 weeks of just knitting. And I ripped it out 3 times because there were so many mistakes in the pattern that I received with the kit. And I didn't know to check for any mistakes in the pattern, that I didn't really want to go straight on to the next one. The other reason that I didn't start it right away, and it's been sitting in a box for months and months, is because it takes 6 balls of lace weight yarn, although they are only 50 grams each. Here they are. And they're very pretty colours and they go very well together. But it took me 6 or 7 hours to hand wind these onto balls the other day, which got me through a lot of TV episodes, but it's very time consuming and sometimes I really don't feel like hand winding that much yarn into balls. There we go. And the other thing I have on the needles I am avoiding. This is the Rock Island shawl. And I need to rip it out. I've already ripped this out once. It's not the pattern's fault, it's my fault. I have made a mistake. I do not know where I have made a mistake. It's too complicated to rip, to tink back. So thankfully the edging here is self-contained because it's knit along the way. And then you pick up the yarn overs along the end and continue to knit. So I'm going to have to rip it back. I've already done this once, and I am avoiding doing it at the moment because I just don't have the heart to do it. Thankfully, these rows here are just plain knitting. It's garter stitch. I was on the, would you believe, the 3rd row of the lace section and I messed up. I was halfway through the next row and it didn't match up, so we shall start this again. This I am knitting in this, which is a very, very, very pretty yarn. It's 100% silk. It's from an Etsy shop called A Dye for Yarn, and it's in the For Weddings and a Funeral colourway, which is very, very pretty purple. Maroony purple, and it's very, very shiny and I love it so much. And it deserves to be this. I saw this pattern and thought, I have to make this into this, I have to make this into this, and now I've messed it up twice. We will get there in the end. Now, acquisitions. I have a huge pile of yarn through there that I received. My friend had posted to me from the States, and I'll go into the ranting about that shortly, which I haven't sorted yet. So the only thing I have to show is this, which is 2 skeins of Knit Pick gloss in the Bordeaux colourway, which I've just realised is very, very similar colour to the Rock Island shawl. And I have 3 balls of wool here that my friend purchased for me. My friend who is not a knitter purchased for me, and I like this. It's nice, but I don't know what to do with it. I have this one, and I have this one. It's Patton's Classic Wool. It's 100% wool. This is New Denim colourway, and this, which I rather like, is the Forest colourway, which looks rather camouflagey. I don't normally knit with this weight of yarn. I only have 1 ball each. I have another one here, which is Sensations Cashmere pattern. Again, it's 100% wool. I think it's worsted weight. I don't normally knit with worsted weight unless I'm making a sweater. I have 1 ball of each. I don't know what to do with it. If anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. There is an amount, 210 yards on these ones and 284 yards on that one. That actually may be DK. I'm thinking hats. My son needs a hat. He took my hat. He broke my hat. I'm not very pleased. And the other thing, which I have sorted, which was in the package, is this lot here. This is Knit Picks lace weight yarn in hideous colours. Again, it's another shawl kit. It's the season's shawl, but it's the summer one. It looks much better on the photograph, but they made it up very nice. You know, they're very bright, and I'm not used to knitting with bright things. There we go. I will show the rest of the stuff next week. I've just not had a chance to unpack it properly and see what's actually there. It has been sitting at my friend's house since August, and it's now February, so I've sort of forgotten what's there. I will now go on to my rant. If you live in the UK, ordering wool from the States is very difficult. A lot of companies don't ship to the UK. I am lucky in that I have a friend who will take in wool for me and then ship it here. This although costs me extra postage, and then there's the issue of VAT. When you get packaged into the UK, you generally pay 20% VAT on it, which is fair enough. It's a bit of a pain when you're ordering small amounts of yarn. If you're ordering 2 skeins of yarn from Etsy, for example, you're pretty much double the price in postage and VAT and customs charges. And I've gone all fuzzy. Sorry about that. Autofocus is a bit of a pain. If I wanted to buy 2 skeins of yarn from Etsy, for example, I would pay probably 16 quid each for them. I would then pay an extra 10 quid in postage, and I would then pay 20% VAT as it came into the country, and I would then pay another 8 quid administration fee from the post office. I got a package last week and I paid £38, probably for $100 worth of stuff, so it soon mounts up. The trouble is that there's not very many places to buy yarn in the UK, especially hand-dyed yarn. Most shops in the UK stock nothing below a DK weight. Everyone over here seems to knit sweaters. Nobody knits socks, nobody knits shawls, so it becomes pretty difficult to source things. I don't mind paying duty. 20% VAT, fair enough, I understand. Where I get really annoyed is when it's £3 of VAT and then £8 administration fee, because the post office has very kindly, without asking you, paid the VAT for you and then charges you for the privilege. So you then have to go to the sorting office, pay them the money in cash because they don't accept cards, which is another pay, to get your yarn. So sometimes it's a bit difficult. And people on Park keep pointing me to Etsy stores with very, very beautiful hand-dyed yarn, which I want so badly, but it's often not worth me buying it, especially if it's only 1 or 2 skeins, because, it's not worth the extra charge. And again with the fuzziness. Right, how are we doing? 15 minutes. I've managed 15 minutes. The other thing I got this week was my children had gone to Scotland for a week. I sent them away on the train. I didn't get nearly as much knitting done as I hoped I would. My mother sent me back this. It's pretty special, you have to admit. This is a pattern book which she very kindly sent me. She obviously had it in the bottom of a wardrobe somewhere. Oh wow. There's no date on this, I have checked. It's obviously from the 70s because the things in this are just, yeah, that's what pattern books used to look like. Now, I'm never ever going to knit anything from this unless the 70s suddenly reoccur. Although I quite like that. But it's interesting to read, simply because the patterns are written completely differently. There are a couple of Fair Isle patterns in here. Let me find them. Yeah, these. There's a couple of Fair Isle patterns in here, and there are no charts, because charts exist, and everything is written down stitch by stitch, and I can't follow that. There's no way I can knit these things. I need to see a chart, I'm afraid. But it's very, very interesting to see how they were written out at that time, and, how difficult it is to follow some of these patterns. My mother used to knit and developed a wool allergy, unfortunately, so she got contact dermatitis from wool and she stopped knitting. My father, and I remembered this story a couple of weeks ago, my father once knitted a sweater. It took him a very long time. I think I was probably 6 or 7 at the time, but I remember him knitting this sweater, and I'm now 30, so it was a long time ago. It was brown. I think it was fairly ugly brown, but it was brown, and it took him a very long time. And he knitted the front, and he knitted the back, and he knitted the sleeves. I think they were flat. And he gave it to my mother to stitch up. It's still in the bottom of the wardrobe. It's still waiting for my mother to sew it together. So it's been 25 years plus. I don't think it will fit him anymore. And he never knitted again, which is such a shame, because I think he rather enjoyed it. This is made worse by the fact, and my mother's going to kill me for this, this is made worse by the fact that my mother's first job out of school was sewing up sweaters from a knitting factory, and she used to make up the sweaters. She'd set in the sleeves and sew up the seams. But apparently she hated my father's sweater so much that it's still in a bag in the bottom of the wardrobe. And next time I go to Scotland, I will sew up my father's sweater. I feel so bad that he spent such a long time on it, and then he stopped because he never produced anything, because this thing was never finished. And yes, my mother is now going to kill me. But yes, it's very interesting seeing how things have changed, and patterns have changed, and fashions have changed. I constantly think, oh, there's so many patterns in Ravelry, how can people keep producing something different? But, you know, when 30 years ago that was what people was knitting, then, you know, it's obvious fashion's changed so much you don't necessarily think about it. Then people will keep producing patterns and coming up with new ideas, and I'm sure pattern writing will change again. We'll discover 3D charts or, pattern holograms or something. So yes, I will never knit anything from this, I don't think, but it's certainly interesting to read. There was also a few cut-out patterns from Women's Weekly, which are pretty hideous. But, she meant well, and it was very nice of her to send them to me. Well, I think 20 minutes is probably your lot for this week. I can't think of anything else to rant about. The only other thing I wanted to say is thank you very much to Erin from the Mummy Needs Yarn podcast, which is fantastic. If you don't watch it, please go and watch it. The woman is amazing. She's so funny. She has given me sewing patterns, Simplicity sewing patterns for bags and skirts. I think she'd advertised them as being given away on her last podcast, so I jumped all over them on Ravelry, and apparently she's sending them to me. The other video podcast you do not want to miss is Stalking Out Zombies. Please go and watch it. Amy and Megan are fantastic. I like the style. It's very informal and very funny, and having two presenters works very well because they talk amongst themselves, which makes you feel like very much like a part of the podcast. I shall say goodbye from slightly cloudy Surrey, and I shall hope to catch you again. Thank you for watching if you watched all the way to the end. Once again, I apologise for my horrible Scottish accent, and I shall hope to see you next week. Goodbye.